A sentence is a collection of words that is grammatically complete by itself and usually expresses a complete idea. It typically contains both a subject and a predicate. In written English, a sentence starts with a capital letter and ends with a period or full stop. A predicate must contain a finite verb that relates to or agrees with the subject. A finite verb is a verb that belongs to a subject and shows tense. For example, I did my homework. Sometimes the subject role is implied or understood. For example, do your homework, where you is understood. An infinite verb or infinitive is made up of the marker to and the main part of the verb. For example, I love to read. Without a finite verb, a sentence is called a sentence fragment. For example, the dilemma that Hamlet expresses in his soliloquy, to be or not to be, is a sentence fragment because it has a verb, used twice in fact, that is not finite. To be is an infinitive. However, that is the question is a complete sentence because is a finite verb. We can classify sentences by function, the work that they do in a sentence, and by form, their structure or their arrangement of words. The four functions are statement, the cat sat on that mat. Question, did the cat sit on that mat? Command, sit on that mat, cat. And exclamation, wow, look at that cat. We need to digress for a moment to explain the term clause. A clause, like a simple sentence, is a string of words that has a subject, even if it is understood, and a predicate that includes a finite verb. An independent, or main or principal clause, can stand alone as a sentence. For example, I love reading. A dependent, or subordinate clause, does not make sense on its own. For example, because I love reading. Clauses can combine to create compound, complex, and compound-complex sentences. We have highlighted clauses in the sentences below about Sherlock Holmes. The orange components are independent or main clauses. The blue ones are dependent clauses. There are four main sentence forms. A simple sentence is made up of one independent clause. Sherlock Holmes waited. A compound sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses, joined by either a semicolon or a coordinating conjunction, such as for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. When a comma is used in front of one of these conjunctions to introduce an independent clause, these conjunctions are called by the mnemonic the comma fanboys. Sherlock Holmes waited, however, Watson delayed his visit. Or, Sherlock Holmes waited and was missed at Lloyd's registers. A complex sentence is made up of one dependent clause subordinated to one independent clause, either at the beginning, that's left branching, in the middle, that's mid branching, or at the end, that's right branching. So, left branching. While Watson moved the lamp, Sherlock Holmes waited. Mid branching. Sherlock Holmes, though he was anxious to have his dinner, waited. And finally, right branching. Sherlock Holmes waited while Watson moved the lamp. A compound complex sentence is made up of a second independent clause added to a complex sentence, or a dependent clause added to a compound sentence. While Watson moved the lamp, Sherlock Holmes waited and was missed at Lloyd's registers. Or, Sherlock Holmes waited and was missed at Lloyd's registers because he was a good customer. In a wonderful book by Stanley Fish, How to Write a Sentence and How to Read One, he asks, how does every component in a sentence function to contribute to extend, to maintain the ensemble of relationships? Fish advises writing students to practice composing sentences and then explain what you have done. Following this lecture, You will find a collection of chunks of texts that you can use to construct complete, coherent sentences using the core sentence Sherlock Holmes waited. There are no right or wrong answers to this activity, and you'll be surprised to know just how many sentences are possible in this exercise. Yet another way to categorise sentences is into loose and periodic forms. A loose sentence positions the important information at the beginning. For example, plain language reforms have become law in many countries because lawmakers believe that citizens should have access to documents they can understand. Can you see why this is a loose sentence? A periodic sentence, on the other hand, positions the important information at the end. For example, because lawmakers believe that citizens should have access to documents they can understand, plain language reforms have become law in many countries. Can you see why this is a periodic sentence? To conclude this section, here's a table to introduce subjects, predicates and objects, which we'll cover next week when we look at verbs.